The book of Sirach, also known as Ecclesiasticus, read by Paul Martin from the Catholic Public Domain version of the Bible. No copyright. Sirach, chapter 18. The one who dwells in eternity created all things together. God alone will be justified, and he remains an invincible king for eternity. Who is able to declare his works? For who can examine his greatness? And who will announce the power of his magnitude? Or who would be able to describe his mercy? There is no diminishing and no increasing, and there is no discovering the greatness of God. When man has reached the end, then he will begin, and when he ceases, he will be in need. What is man, and what is his grace, and what is his good, or what is his evil? The number of the days of men are as many as 100 years. Like a drop of water in the ocean, so they are considered to be, and like a grain of sand on the shore, so do these few years compare to the days of all time. For this reason, God is patient with them, and he pours forth his mercy upon them. He has seen that the presumption of their heart is evil, and he knows that their rebelliousness is wicked. Therefore he has bestowed his forgiveness on them, and he has revealed to them the way of equity. The compassion of man is towards those closest to him, but the mercy of God is upon all flesh. He is merciful, and he teaches and corrects like a shepherd with his flock. He takes pity on those who accept the doctrine of compassion, and he applies his judgments promptly. Son, if your good works, you should not complain, and in giving anything, you should not cause grief with evil words. Is heat not refreshed by the dew? So also is a good word better than a gift. Behold, is a good word not greater than a gift? But both are with a justified man. The foolish place blame sharply, and a gift from the undisciplined causes the eyes to fail. Before you judge, put justice in order within yourself, and before you speak, learn. Before you become sick, obtain medicine, and before you judge, examine yourself, and then you will find forgiveness in the sight of God. Before you become weak, humble yourself, and in a time of infirmity, show your way of life. Let nothing impede you from praying always, and then you will not dread to be justified, even unto death, for the reward of God dwells in eternity. Before you pray, prepare your soul, and do not choose to be like a man who tempts God. Remember the wrath that will be on the day of consummation, and remember the time of retribution, when he will turn away his face. Remember poverty in a time of abundance, and remember the deficiency of poverty in a day of riches. From morning until evening, the time will be changed, and all these are swift in the eyes of God. A wise man will be cautious in all things, and during a time of many offences, he will be attentive against inaction. Anyone who is astute recognizes wisdom, and he will acknowledge anyone who finds it. Those who show understanding with words also have acted wisely themselves, and they have understood truth and justice, and they have fulfilled proverbs and judgments. You should not go after your desires. Instead, turn away from your own will. If you offer your desires to your soul, this will cause you to become a joy to your enemies, Take no delight in disorderly gatherings, whether large or small, for their commission of offences is unceasing. You should not be reduced by the contention of borrowing, even if there is nothing in your purse, for you would be contending against your own life. Chapter 19. An inebriated worker will not be wealthy, and whoever despises littleness will fall a little at a time. Wine and women cause men to fall away, and then they will complain against those who understand. And whoever joins himself to fornicators will become wicked. Decay and worms will inherit him, and he will be denounced as the greater example, and his soul will be deducted from the number. Whoever is quick to believe has a trivial heart, and will be diminished, and whoever offends against his own soul will have even less. Whoever rejoices in iniquity will be condemned, and whoever hates correction will have less in life. But whoever hates excessive talk extinguishes evil. Whoever sins against his own soul will be punished, and whoever rejoices in malice will be condemned. You should not repeat a wicked and harsh word, and then you will not be diminished. Do not reveal your mind to friend or foe, and if there is a sin within you, do not disclose it, for he will listen to you and watch you, and while pretending to defend your sin, he will despise you, and so he will be whenever he is with you. Have you heard a word against your neighbour? Let it die within you, trusting that it will not burst forth from you. Before the face of a word, a foolish man labours, like a woman groaning as she gives birth to a child. Like an arrow fixed in the flesh of the thigh, so is a word in the heart of a foolish man. Correct a friend, though perhaps there was a misunderstanding, and he may say, I did not do it, or if he did do it, correct him, so that he may not do it again. Correct your neighbour, for perhaps he did not say it, but if he did say it, correct him, so that he may not say it again. Correct your friend, for often a fault has been committed, and do not believe every word. There is one who slips with his word, but not with his heart. For who is there who has not offended with his words? Correct your neighbour before you reprimand him, and make a place for the fear of the Most High. For all wisdom is fear of God, and it is wise to fear God, and in all wisdom is the orderly disposition of the law. But the discipline of wickedness is not wisdom, and there is no prudence in the thoughts of sinners. There is a wickedness, and in it there is abomination, and there is a foolish man who has been diminished in wisdom. Better is a man who has been diminished in wisdom, because his mind is failing, but with the fear of God, than he who abounds in intelligence, but with transgression against the law of the Most High. There is a certain cleverness, and it is unjust. And there is one who utters a careful word explaining away the truth. There is one who humbles himself wickedly, for his interior is filled with deceit. And there is one who lowers himself excessively with a great debasement, and there is one who inclines his face downward, and pretends as if he did not see what has not been made known. And if he is prevented from sinning by a lack of ability, and then finds an opportunity for evil doing, he will do evil. A man is recognized by his appearances, but when you meet an understanding man, he is recognized by his face. The clothing of the body, and the laughter of the teeth, and the walk of a man give a report about him. There is a lying correction in the anger of a contemptuous man, and there is a judgment which does not prove to be good. But there is one who is silent, and the same is prudent. Chapter 20. How much better is it to reprove than to become angry, so as not to hinder him who may confess in prayer? The lust of a eunuch will deflower a young maiden, similar as he who by violence gives an iniquitous judgment. How good it is when you are corrected to show contrition, for in this way you will escape deliberate sin. There is one who, by remaining silent, is found to be wise, and there is another who is hateful and who provokes by speaking out. There is one who, not having the understanding to speak, remains silent, and there is another who remains silent, knowing the proper time. A wise man will remain silent until the proper time, but an unrestrained and imprudent person will not heed the times. Whoever uses many words will wound his own soul, and whoever unjustly takes authority upon himself will be hated. There is advancement in evil for an undisciplined man, and there is a plan which turns to his detriment. There is a gift which is not helpful, and there is a gift the repayment for which is double. There is a loss for the sake of boasting, and there is one who will lift up his head from lowliness. There is one who buys much for a small price, and who pays it back sevenfold. Anyone wise in words makes himself loved, but the graces of the foolish will be poured away. A gift from the unwise will not benefit you, for his gaze is divided sevenfold. He will give little and reproach much, and the opening of his mouth is like a burning flame. There is one who lends today and demands repayment tomorrow. A man such as this is hateful. A foolish man will not have a friend, and there will be no thanks for his good deeds. For those who eat his bread have a false tongue. How often and how many are those who will ridicule him? For what he possesses, he does not distribute with correct understanding, and he acts similarly with what he does not possess. The slip of a false tongue is like someone who falls upon pavement. Such a fall for the wicked will arrive quickly. A disagreeable man is like a pointless fable. It will be continually in the mouth of the undisciplined. A parable from the mouth of a fool will be rejected, for he does not speak it at the proper time. There is one who is prevented from sinning by poverty, and in his rest he will be vexed. There is one who will lose his own soul because of pretense, and he will lose it by an example of imprudence. For by seeking the approval of another he will destroy himself. There is one who, for the sake of what others think, makes a promise to a friend, and so he gains him as an enemy for no reason. A lie is a wicked disgrace to a man, and yet lies will be continually in the mouths of those without discipline. A thief is better than a man who constantly lies, but both of them will inherit perdition. The habits of lying men are without honour, and their shame is with them without ceasing. A wise man will benefit himself by his own words, and a prudent man will please the powerful. Whoever works his land will raise high a stockpile of grain, and whoever works justice will himself be raised high. Yet truly, whoever pleases the powerful will escape unfair treatment. Presents and gifts blind the eyes of judges, and silence their mouths, turning them aside from their task of correction. Wisdom hidden, and treasure unseen, of what use is either of these? He who hides his foolishness is better than a man who conceals his wisdom. Chapter 21. Son, have you sinned? You should not add further sins. Then too, for your former sins pray so that they may be forgiven you. Flee from sins as if from the face of a serpent, for if you approach them, they will take hold of you. Their teeth are like the teeth of a lion, bringing death to the souls of men. All iniquity is like a two-edged spear. There is no healing in its wound. Reproach and injury will make resources useless, and a house that is exceedingly wealthy will become powerless through pride. In this way, the resources of the arrogant will be eradicated. Supplications from the mouth of the pauper will reach all the way to the ears of God, and judgment will come to him quickly. Whoever hates correction is walking in the steps of a sinner, but whoever fears God will convert within his heart. He who has power by means of a bold tongue will be known from far away, but an understanding man knows to slip past him. Whoever builds his house, paid for by another, is like one who gathers his building stones in winter. The synagogue of sinners is like stubble piled up, for the end of them both is a burning fire. The way of sinners is paved and level, and at their end is hell and darkness and punishments. Whoever observes justice will obtain an understanding of it. The consummation of the fear of God is wisdom and understanding. One who is not wise in goodness will not accept instruction. Now there is a wisdom which abounds in evil, but there is no understanding where there is bitterness. The knowledge of the wise will increase like a flood, and his counsel will continue like a fountain of life. The heart of the foolish is like a broken vessel, for it will not hold any wisdom. A knowledgeable man will praise any wise word he hears, and he will apply it to himself. The self-indulgent man has heard it, and it displeases him, and so he casts it behind his back. The talk of the foolish is like a burden on a journey, but in the lips of the understanding grace will be found. The mouth of the prudent is sought in the church, and they will consider his words in their hearts. Like a house which has been demolished, so is wisdom to the foolish, and the knowledge of the unwise is like meaningless words. Doctrine to the senseless is like fetters on the feet, and like chains on the right hand. A foolish man lifts up his voice in laughter, but a wise man will not even laugh quietly to himself. Doctrine is to the prudent like a gold ornament, and like an armband on the right arm. The feet of the foolish step easily into his neighbour's house, but an experienced man will be apprehensive in the presence of the powerful. A senseless man will gaze through a window into the house, but a man who has been well taught will stand outside. It is foolish for a man to listen through the door, and a prudent man will be grieved at this disgrace. The lips of the imprudent will describe senseless things, but the words of the prudent will be weighed on a balance. The hearts of the foolish are in their mouths, but the mouths of the wise are with their hearts. Whenever the impious curse the devil, they curse their own soul. Those who whisper accusations defile their own souls, and they will be hated by all, and whoever abides with them will be hateful. The silent and understanding man will be honoured. Chapter 22. The lazy man is pelted with a dirty stone, and all will speak about his rejection. The lazy man is pelted with the dung of oxen, and all who touch him will brush off their hands. An undisciplined son is the shame of his father, but an undisciplined daughter will be to his degradation. A prudent daughter brings an inheritance to her husband, but she who causes shame will be a disgrace to him who conceived her. She who is bold shames her father and her husband, and she will not be less offensive to the impious. For she will be held in dishonour by both. An untimely explanation is like music in a time of mourning, but the sharp correction and doctrine of wisdom are ever timely. Whoever teaches the foolish is like someone who glues together a broken pot. Whoever explains a word to one who is not listening is like someone who suddenly awakens a sleeping person from a deep sleep. Whoever explains wisdom to the senseless is like one speaking to a sleeping person, and at the end of the explanation he says, "Who is this?" Weep over the dead, for his light has failed, and weep over the foolish, for his understanding has failed. Weep only a little over the dead, for he is at rest. But the wicked life of a wicked fool is worse than death. The mourning for the dead is 7 days, but for the foolish and the impious it is all the days of their life. You should not talk at length with the foolish, and you should not go with the senseless. Keep yourself from him, so that you may not have problems, and so that you will not be polluted by his sin. Turn away from him, and you will find rest, and you will not be discouraged by his foolishness. What is heavier than lead, and what else can he be called but foolish? Sand and salt, and an iron weight, are each easier to bear than an imprudent man who is both foolish and impious. A bundle of wood strapped together in the foundation of a building will not be loosened, and similar is the heart that has been strengthened by thoughtful counsel. The thoughts of one who is understanding will not be corrupted by fear in any situation. Just as chaff in a high place, or a wall made of mortar without stones set within, will not continue against the face of the wind, so also a timid heart and the thoughts of the senseless will not withstand the forcefulness of fear. Despite a cowardly heart, the thoughts of the foolish will not fear any situation, yet neither will one who continues always in the precepts of God. He who jabs an eye produces tears, and he who jabs the heart produces understanding. He who throws a stone at birds will drive them away, so also he who accuses his friend dissolves the friendship. But if you have drawn a sword against a friend, you should not despair, for there may be a way back. But if you have opened a harsh mouth against a friend, you should not fear, for there may be a reconciliation. However, if there are accusations or abuse or arrogance or the revealing of secrets or a wound from deceitfulness, in all these cases a friend will flee away. Hold to faithfulness with a friend in his poverty, so that you may also rejoice in his prosperity. In the time of his tribulation remain faithful to him, so that you may also be an heir with him in his inheritance. Just as the steam from an oven or the smoke from a fire rises up before a flame, so also do curses and insults and threats rise up before bloodshed. I shall not be ashamed to greet a friend, nor shall I hide myself from his face. And if misfortunes befall me, because of him I will endure. Anyone who hears of this will be wary around him. Who will provide a keeper for my mouth, and a reliable seal over my lips, so that I may not fall because of them, and so that my tongue does not destroy me? Chapter 23. Lord, Father, and Ruler of my life, may you not abandon me to their counsel, nor permit me to fall by them. They would impose scourges over my thoughts, and over the discipline of wisdom in my heart, and they would not spare me from their ignorances, nor would they allow their own offences to become apparent. And they intend that my ignorances would increase, and my offences be multiplied, and my sins abound, and so I would fall in the sight of my adversaries, and be rejoiced over by my enemy. Lord, Father, and God of my life, may you not abandon me to their plans. Do not leave me with the haughtiness of my eyes, and avert all desire from me. Take the desire of the body from me, and do not allow sexual desire to take hold of me, and do not permit an irreverent and senseless mind within me. O sons, listen to the doctrine of my mouth, for those who observe it will not perish by the lips, nor be scandalized into wicked works. A sinner is held by his own emptiness, and the arrogant and those who speak evil will be scandalized by these things. Do not allow your mouth to become accustomed to swearing oaths, for in this there are many pitfalls. Truly, do not allow the naming of God to be continually in your mouth, and do not treat as if common the names of the holy ones, for you will not escape punishment by them. Just as a servant, continually interrogated, will not be without a bruise, so everyone who swears oaths and takes God's name will not be entirely free from sin. A man who swears many oaths will be filled with iniquity, and scourges will not depart from his house. And if he fails to fulfill it, his offences will be over him, and if he pretends he fulfilled it, he offends doubly. And if he swears an oath insincerely, he will not be justified, for his house will be filled with retribution for him. There is yet another kind of talk which faces death. Let it not be found in the inheritance of Jacob. For all these things will be taken away from the merciful, and they shall not wallow in offences. Do not allow your mouth to become accustomed to undisciplined speech, for in this there is the sin of words. When you sit in the midst of great men, remember your father and mother. Otherwise God may forget you. Then you are in their sight, and then you would be repeatedly ridiculed and would suffer disgrace, and you might wish that you had never been born, and you might curse the day of your nativity. The man who is accustomed to disgraceful words will not accept instruction all the days of his life. Two kinds of persons abound in sins, and a third adds wrath and perdition: a desirous soul, is like a burning fire. It will not be quenched until it devours something. And a man who is wicked in the desires of his flesh will not desist until he has kindled a fire. To a man of fornication all bread is sweet. He will not tire of transgression to the very end. Every man who transgresses his own bed has contempt for his own soul, and so he says, "Who can see me?" Darkness surrounds me, and the walls enclose me, and no one catches sight of me. Whom should I fear? The Most High will not remember my offences. And he does not understand that God's eye sees all things. For fear within a man, such as this, drives away from him both the fear of God and the eyes of those men who fear God. And he does not acknowledge that the eyes of the Lord are much brighter than the sun, keeping watch over all the ways of men, even to the depths of the abyss, and gazing into the hearts of men, even to the most hidden parts. For all things, before they were created, were known to the Lord God, and even after their completion he beholds all things. This man will be punished in the streets of the city, and he will be chased like a young horse, and in a place that he does not suspect he will be captured. And because he did not understand the fear of the Lord, he will be in disgrace before all men, as will be every woman too who abandons her husband and establishes an inheritance by marriage to another man. For first she was unbelieving of the law of the Most High. Second, she offended against her husband. Third, she fornicated by adultery, and so established her children by another man. This woman will be led into the assembly, and she will be stared at by her children. Her children will not take root, and her branches will not produce fruit. She will leave behind her memory as a curse, and her infamy will not be wiped away. And those who are left behind will acknowledge that there is nothing better than the fear of God, and that there is nothing sweeter than to have respect for the commandments of the Lord. It is a great glory to follow the Lord, for length of days will be received from him. Chapter 24. Wisdom will praise her own mind, and she will be honoured by God, and she will be glorified in the midst of her people. And she will open her mouth in the churches of the Most High, and she will be glorified in the sight of his virtue. And in the midst of her own people she will be exalted, and she will be admired by the holy assembly. And she will have praise within the multitude of the elect, and she will be blessed among the blessed. And she will say, I went forth from the mouth of the Most High as the firstborn before all creatures. I caused an unfailing light to arise in the heavens, and I covered all the earth like a cloud. I lived in the highest places, and my throne is in the pillar of a cloud. I alone have encompassed the circuit of heaven, and have penetrated to the depths of the abyss, and have walked upon the waves of the sea, and have stood upon the whole earth. And among every people and in every nation I have held primacy. And by virtue I have tread upon the hearts of all, the great and the lowly, and I have sought my rest in all of them. And I will continue as the inheritance of the Lord. Then the Creator of all things instructed and spoke with me. And the one who created me rested in my tabernacle, and he said to me, Let your dwelling place be with Jacob, and let your inheritance be in Israel, for you shall take root among my elect. From the beginning, and before the world, I was created, and even unto the future world I will not cease to exist. For I have ministered before him in the holy habitation. And in this way I was established in Zion, and likewise in the holy city I found rest, and my authority was in Jerusalem. And I took root among an honourable people, within the portion of my God, within his inheritance, and so my abode is in the full assembly of the saints. I was exalted like a cedar in Lebanon, and like a cypress on Mount Zion. I was exalted like a palm tree in Kadesh, and like a rose bush in Jericho. I was exalted like a beautiful olive tree in the plains, and like a sycamore tree beside the waters along a wide road. I gave off an aromatic fragrance like cinnamon or balsam. I produced a sweet odour like the best myrrh. And I perfumed my dwelling place with sweet gum and aromatic resin and flower petals and aloe, as well as the finest cedar from Lebanon, and my fragrance is like undiluted balsam. I have extended my branches like a terebinth tree, and my branches are of honour and grace. Like the vine, I have borne the fruit of a sweet fragrance, and my flowers are the fruit of honour and integrity. I am the mother of the beauty of love and of fear and of knowledge and of holy hope. All grace of the way and of the truth is in me. All hope of life and of virtue is in me. Journey toward me, all you who desire me, and be filled by my harvest. For my spirit is sweeter than honey, and my inheritance is better than honey and the honeycomb. My memory is for the generations of all ages. Whoever consumes me will hunger still, and whoever drinks me will thirst still. Whoever listens to me will not be confounded, and whoever acts in me will not sin. Whoever elucidates me will have eternal life. All this is a book of life, and a covenant of the Most High, and an acknowledgement of truth. Moses commanded the law by the precepts of justice, and an inheritance to the house of Jacob, and the promises to Israel. God appointed David as his servant, in order to raise up from him a most mighty king, who would sit upon the throne of honour forever. It is he who fulfils wisdom, like the Pison river and the Tigris river in the first days. It is he who fulfils understanding like the river Euphrates. It is he who multiplies understanding like the river Jordan in the time of the harvest. He sends forth discipline like the light, and he stands forth like the river Gihon in the time of the vintage. He first had perfect knowledge of her, for a weaker one would not search for her. For her thoughts abound like the sea, and her counsels abound like the great abyss. I, wisdom, have poured forth rivers. I am like a brook leading to a river of immense waters. I am like a channel flowing from a river. And I went forth from paradise like an aqueduct. I said, I will irrigate my garden of plantings, and I will thoroughly water the fruits of my field. And behold, my brook became overflowing, and my river drew near to the sea. For I illuminate doctrine to all, like the first light, and I will announce doctrine even to those who are far away. I will reach to all the lower parts of the earth, and I will gaze upon all who sleep, and I will illuminate all who hope in the Lord. Even now I pour forth doctrine like prophecy, and even now I bequeath doctrine to those who seek wisdom, and I will not cease from their progeny, even unto the holy time. See how I have not laboured for myself alone, but for all who are seeking truth. Chapter 25. My spirit is pleased with 3 things. These are approved in the sight of God and men: the harmony of brothers, and the love of neighbours, and a husband and wife agreeing well together. My soul hates 3 kinds of things, and I am greatly distressed over their souls: an arrogant pauper, a wealthy liar, a foolish and senseless elder. The things that you have not obtained in your youth, how will you find them in your old age? How beautiful it is for a grey head to have judgment, and for elders to know counsel. How beautiful it is for those who are aged to have wisdom, and for those who are honoured to have understanding and counsel. Great experience is the crown of the aged, and the fear of God is their glory. I have magnified 9 things, overlooked by the heart, and a 10th I will declare to men with my tongue: a man who finds joy in his children, and one who lives to see the undoing of his enemies. Blessed is he who lives with a wise wife, and he who has not slipped with his tongue, and he who has not served those unworthy of himself. Blessed is he who finds a true friend, and he who describes justice to an attentive ear. How great is he who finds wisdom and knowledge! But there is no one above him who fears the Lord. The fear of God has set itself above all things. Blessed is the man to whom it has been given to have the fear of God. He who holds to it, to whom can he be compared? The fear of God is the beginning of his love, and the beginning of faith has been joined closely to the same. The sadness of the heart is every wound, and the wickedness of a wife is every malice. And a man will choose any wound but the wound of the heart, and any wickedness but the wickedness of a wife, and any obstacle but the obstacle of those who hate him, and any vindication but the vindication of his enemies. There is no head worse than the head of a serpent, and there is no anger above the anger of a wife. It would be more agreeable to abide with a lion or a dragon than to live with a wicked wife. A wicked wife changes her face, and she darkens her countenance like a bear, and she displays it like sackcloth in the midst of her neighbours. Her husband groans, and hearing of this he sighs a little. All malice is brief compared to the malice of a wife. Let the fate of sinners fall upon her. As climbing over sand is to the feet of the aged, so is a talkative wife to a quiet man. You should not favour a woman's beauty, and you should not desire a wife for her beauty. The anger and disrespect and shame from a wife can be great. The wife, if she has primacy, is set against her husband. A wicked wife debases the heart and saddens the face and wounds the heart. A wife who does not make her husband happy enfeebles the hands and weakens the knees. The beginning of sin came from a woman, and through her we all die. You should not provide an exit to your water, not even a little, nor should you give permission for a wicked wife to exceed the limit. If she will not walk at your hand, she will confound you in the sight of your enemies. Tear her away from your body, lest she abuse you continually. Chapter 26. Blessed is the husband of a good wife, for the number of his years is doubled. A good wife delights her husband, and she will fill up the years of his life with peace. A good wife is a good portion. She will be given the portion of those who fear God, like a man who has done good deeds. But rich or poor, with a good heart his countenance will be cheerful at all times. Of 3 things my heart has been afraid, and at a 4th my face has shown dread. An accusation made by a city, and the gathering of a mob, and a deceitful, false accusation. All these are more grievous than death. A jealous wife is a grief and a mourning to the heart. In a jealous wife there is a scourge of the tongue which communicates with everyone. Like a yoke of oxen being provoked, so also is a wicked wife. He who has hold of her is like one who has taken hold of a scorpion. An inebriated wife is a great wrath, and her disgrace and indecency will not be covered. The fornication of a wife will become known by the haughtiness of her eyes, and by her eyelids, so that her daughter will not also turn away. Keep a strict watch. Otherwise, having found an opportunity, she may enjoy herself. Be wary of the irreverence of her eyes, and you should not wonder if she might disregard you. Like a thirsty traveller, she will open her mouth to the fountain, and she will drink from every water nearby, and she will sit down beside every fence post, and she will open her quiver to every arrow until she becomes weary. The grace of an attentive wife will delight her husband, and will fatten his bones. Her discipline is a gift from God. Such is an understanding and quiet wife, for there is no substitution for a well-instructed soul. A holy and contrite wife is grace upon grace, and no amount of money is equal to the value of a soul with self-restraint. Like the sun rising over the world in the high places of God, so the beauty of a good wife is the adornment of her house. Like a lamp shining atop a holy lampstand, so is the beauty of a face in the mature stage of life. Like golden pillars upon bases of silver, so are the firm feet of a mature wife upon the soles of her feet. Like everlasting foundations upon a solid rock, so are the commandments of God in the heart of a holy wife. By 2 things my heart is greatly saddened, and at a 3rd anger overwhelms me. A man of war failing because of dire need, and an understanding man treated with contempt, and anyone who crosses over from justice to sin. God has prepared such a one for the spear. 2 kinds of things have seemed difficult and dangerous to me. A merchant will not be easily freed from his negligence, and a shopkeeper will not be justified by the sins of his lips. Chapter 27. Because of need, many have sinned, and whoever seeks to be enriched averts his eye. Like a post fixed in the middle of adjoining stones, so also will sin become wedged between selling and buying. Sin will be crushed with the one who sins. If you do not hold yourself steadfastly to the fear of the Lord, your house will be quickly overthrown. Just as the dust remains when one shakes a sieve, so will the doubt of a man remain in his thoughts. The furnace tests the potter's vessels, and the trial of the tribulation tests just men. As the pruning of a tree reveals its fruit, so does a word reveal the thoughts of the heart of a man. You should not praise a man before he speaks, for such is the testing of men. If you pursue justice, you will obtain it, and you will be clothed with justice, as with a long robe of honour, and you will live with justice, and justice will protect you continually, and on the day of reckoning you will find a strong foundation. Birds flock to their own kind, and truth will return to those who practice it. The lion lies in wait for its prey continually, so also do sins lie in wait for those who work iniquity. A holy man persists in wisdom like the sun, but a senseless man changes like the moon. In the midst of the senseless, retain a word for the proper time, but be continually in the midst of those who are thoughtful. The discussions of sinners are hateful, and their laughter is a delight in sin. The speech that swears many oaths will cause the hair of the head to stand upright, and its irreverence will cause the ears to be blocked. The shedding of blood is in the quarrels of the arrogant, and their evil talk is grievous to hear. Whoever discloses the secret of a friend breaks faith, and he will not find a friend for his soul. Love your neighbour, and be united with him faithfully. But if you disclose his secrets, you should not continue to follow after him. For like a man who destroys his friend, so also is he who destroys the friendship of his neighbour. And like someone releasing a bird from his hand, so have you abandoned your neighbour, and you will not obtain him again. You should no longer seek him, for he is now far away. He has fled like a roe deer from a snare, for his soul has been wounded. You will no longer be able to bind his wound, for there may be a reconciliation from cursing, but to disclose the secrets of a friend is the hopeless act of an unhappy soul. One who winks with the eye fabricates iniquity, and no one will cast him aside. In the sight of your eyes he will sweeten his mouth, and he will admire your talk. But at the very end he will pervert his mouth, and he will offer a scandal from your own words. I have hated many things, but I have not done as he has done, and the Lord will hate him. Whoever throws a stone straight up will find that it falls on his own head, and a deceitful wound will return to wound the deceitful. And whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever positions a stone against his neighbour will stumble over it, and whoever lays a trap for another will perish by it. Whoever sets in motion a wicked plan will find that it rolls back over him, and he will not know from which direction it will arrive. Mockery and derision are of the arrogant, and vengeance will lie in wait for them like a lion. Whoever enjoys the fall of the just will perish in a snare, and grief will consume them before they die. Anger and fury are both abominable, and the sinful man will be held by them. Chapter 28. Whoever wishes for vengeance will find vengeance from the Lord, and he will surely be attentive to his sins. Forgive your neighbour if he has harmed you, and then your sins will be forgiven you when you pray. A man holds on to anger against another man, and does he then seek a remedy from God? He has no mercy on a man like himself, and does he then entreat for his own sins? He who is but flesh holds on to anger, and does he then request forgiveness from God? Who can obtain pardon for his sins in this way? Remember your very end, and let animosities cease. For corruption and death are suspended over his commandments. Remember the fear of God, and do not be angry with your neighbour. Remember the covenant of the Most High, and overlook the ignorant offences of your neighbour. Refrain from strife, and you will diminish your sins. For an ill-tempered man inflames conflict, and a sinful man troubles his friends, and he casts hostility into the midst of those who have peace. For the fire burns according to the wood of the forest, and the anger of a man burns according to the strength of the man, and according to his resources he will exalt his anger. A hasty contention kindles a fire, a hasty quarrel sheds blood, and an accusatory tongue brings death. If you blow on a spark, it will increase to a fire, but if you spit on it, it will be extinguished. Both of these proceed from the mouth. The double-tongued whisperer is accursed, for he has disturbed many who had peace. A third tongue has stirred up many, and has scattered them from nation to nation. It has destroyed the walled cities of the wealthy, and has undermined the houses of the great. It has cut down the virtues of the peoples, and has broken strong nations. A third tongue has cast down virtuous women, and has deprived them of their labours. Whoever favours it will not have rest, nor will he have a friend in whom he may find peace. The wound of a whip causes a bruise, and the wound of the tongue will crush the bones. Many have fallen by the mouth of the sword, but not as many as have perished by their own tongue. Blessed is he who is protected from a wicked tongue, who has not gone over to its wrath, and has not pulled its yoke, and has not been bound by its chains. For its yoke is a yoke of iron, and its chains are chains of brass. Its death is a most wicked death, and hell is more useful than it is. Its continuance will not be permanent, but it will take hold of the ways of the unjust, and the just will not be burned by its flame. Those who abandon God will fall by it, and it will burn within them and not be quenched, and it will be sent upon them like a lion, and it will wound them like a leopard. Hedge your ears with thorns. Do not be willing to listen to a wicked tongue, and make doors and bars for your mouth. Melt down your gold and your silver, and make a scale for your words, and an upright bridle for your mouth. And be attentive, lest perhaps you may slip with your tongue and fall in the sight of your enemies, who are lying in wait for you, and then your fall may be incurable unto death. Chapter 29. He shows mercy who lends to his neighbour, for he keeps the commandments by strengthening him. Lend to your neighbour in his time of need, and receive it again from your neighbour in his time. Keep your word and act faithfully with him, and then you will find whatever you need in every time. Many have treated a loan like found money, and they offered trouble to those who helped them. Until they receive, they kiss the hands of the giver, and they humble their voice in promises. But at the time of repayment, they will ask for more time, and they will speak annoying and complaining words, and they will make excuses for the time. Then, if he is able to repay, he will turn away. He will pay barely 1/2, and he will consider it as if he had found it. But if not, then he will defraud him of his money, and he will have him as an enemy without cause. And he will repay him with accusations and curses, and he will repay him with contempt instead of with honour and kindness. Many have refused to lend, not because of wickedness, but because they were afraid to be defrauded without cause. Yet truly, be more steadfast towards the humble, and you should not delay in acts of mercy towards them. Assist the poor because of the commandment, and you should not send him away empty because of his dire need. Lose your money to your brother and your friend, for you should not hide it under a stone to be lost. Let your treasure be in the precepts of the Most High, and it will benefit you more than gold. Store your alms in the hearts of the poor, and it will obtain help for you against all evil. Better than the shield or the lance of a powerful man, it will fight for you against your enemy. A good man offers credit for the sake of his neighbour, but one who abandons him to himself will perish in shame. You should not forget the kindness of your benefactor, for he has offered his life on your behalf. The sinner and the unclean flee from such promises. A sinner attributes to himself the goods of his loan, and an ungrateful mind will abandon the one who has freed him. A man offers credit to his neighbour, but when he will have lost respect, he will abandon him. A wicked promise has destroyed many who have good intentions, and has tossed them like a wave on the ocean. It has caused powerful men to travel around, and they have wandered amid foreign nations. A sinner transgressing the commandment of the Lord will fall into a wicked promise, and he who undertakes many things will fall into judgment. Help your neighbour to recover according to your ability, but attend to yourself lest you also fall. The primary need in a man's life is water and bread and clothing and a house to protect modesty. A pauper's food under a roof of boards is better than a splendid feast on a sojourn away from home. Let yourself be pleased with little instead of much, and you will not hear the reproach of being away from home. It is a wicked life to go from house to house as a guest, for wherever he is a guest, he will not act confidently nor open his mouth. He will entertain and feed and give drink to the ungrateful, and beyond this he will listen to bitter words. Go, my guest, and set the table, and let others eat from what you have in your hand. Depart from the honoured face of my friends, for it has become necessary for my house to host my brother instead. These things are grievous to a man having understanding, to take advantage of a household and to reproach a lender. Chapter 30. He who loves his son will frequently chastise him, so that he may be happy in the very end, and not grope for the doors of his neighbours. He who instructs his son will be praised over him, and will glory in him in the midst of his household. He who teaches his son will make his enemy jealous, and in the midst of his friends he will glory in him. When his father has died, it will be as if he were not dead, for he will have left behind someone who is like himself. In his life he saw him and rejoiced in him, and at his passing he was not sorrowful, nor was he confounded in the sight of his enemies. For he left behind himself a defender of his house against his enemies, and someone who will repay his friends with kindness. For the sake of the souls of his sons he will bind up his wounds, and at every voice his gut will be stirred up. An untamed horse becomes stubborn, and a child left to himself becomes headstrong. Coddle a son, and he will make you afraid. Play with him, and he will make you sorrowful. You should not laugh with him, otherwise you may have grief, and in the end your teeth be clenched. You should not give him power in his youth, but you should not despise his thoughts. Bow down his neck in his youth, and slap his sides while he is a child, lest perhaps he may become stubborn, and then he will not trust you, and so he will bring sorrow to your soul. Instruct your son, and work with him, lest you give offence by his shameful behaviour. Better is a healthy pauper with a strong constitution than a wealthy man who is weak and afflicted with maladies. A healthy soul with the sanctity of justice is better than all the gold and silver, and a sound body is better than immense revenues. There is no revenue above the revenue of a healthy body, and there is no delight above a joyful heart. Death is better than a bitter life, and eternal rest is better than continual sickness. Good things hidden in a closed mouth are like seats at a feast placed around a grave. What benefit is there in an offering to an idol? For it can neither eat nor smell. So is he who flees from the Lord, carrying the wages of his iniquity. He sees with his eyes and groans, like a eunuch who embraces a virgin and sighs. You should not give your soul to sadness, and you should not afflict yourself by your own counsel. The gladness of the heart is the life of a man, and it is a treasure of sanctity without defect. And the exaltation of a man is length of life. Take pity on your own soul by pleasing God, and show self-restraint. Gather your heart into his sanctity, and drive sadness far away from yourself. For sadness has killed many, and there is no usefulness in it. Envy and anger will diminish your days, and pensiveness will bring old age before its time. A cheerful and good heart is like a feast, and its feasts are formed by diligence. Chapter 31. Watching for wealth consumes the flesh, and thinking about it takes away sleep. Anticipation in thought distracts the mind, and a grievous infirmity makes the soul sober. The rich man has laboured in gathering wealth, and in his rest he will be filled with his goods. The poor man has laboured in his lowly way, and in the end he may still be in need. Whoever loves gold will not be justified, and whoever pursues consumption will be consumed by it. Many have been caused to fall because of gold, and it became their ruin by its beauty. Gold is a stumbling block to those who sacrifice for it. Woe to those who pursue it eagerly, for all the imprudent will perish by it. Blessed is the rich man who is found to be without blemish, and blessed is he who has not gone after gold, nor placed his hope in money or treasures. Who is he? For we should praise him, for he has done wonderful things in his life. He has been tested by it, and has become perfect. He will have eternal glory. He was able to transgress, but he has not transgressed. He was able to do evil, but he has not done evil. Therefore, his good things are established in the Lord, and the entire church of the saints will proclaim his almsgiving. Are you seated at a great table? You should not open your mouth over it first. You should not speak in this way. There are many things that are upon it. Remember that a wicked eye is evil. What has been made more wicked than the eye? Therefore, when it sees, it will shed tears over the entire face. You should not extend your hand first, for then, having been corrupted by envy, you would be ashamed. You should not press forward at a feast. Understand which things are your neighbour's and not your own. Make use of the things that are set before you, just as a frugal man would. Otherwise, if you eat much, you will be hated. Cease eating first for the sake of discipline, and do not eat to excess, lest you offend. And if you sit in the midst of many, you should not extend your hand before they do, and you should not be the first to ask for a drink. How sufficient is a little wine for a well-taught man, for in sleep you will not labour because of it, and you will not feel pain. Worry and disease and torment are with an intemperate man. A healthy sleep is with a temperate man. He will sleep until morning, and his soul will be delighted with him. And if you have been coaxed into eating too much, rise up, go outside, and vomit, and it will refresh you, and you will not bring sickness upon your body. Listen to me, son, for you should not spurn me, and in the very end you will discover my words. In all your works be prompt, and then no infirmity will befall you. The lips of many will bless the splendid in bread, for the testimony of his truthfulness is faithful. The city will murmur against the wicked in bread, for the testimony against his wickedness is true. Do not choose to provoke those who love wine, for wine has destroyed many. Fire tests the hardness of iron. Similarly, drinking wine to inebriation will rebuke the hearts of the arrogant. Drinking wine in sobriety gives a contented life to men. If you drink it in moderation, you will be sober. What is life to him who is diminished by wine? What can cheat him of his life? Death. From the beginning, wine was created for cheerfulness, but not for inebriation. Wine, taken in moderation, lifts up the mind and the heart. Sober drinking is healthful to mind and body. Wine taken in excess stirs up conflict and anger and brings many to ruin. Wine taken in excess is bitter to the soul. The effects of inebriation are a stumbling block to the imprudent, diminishing strength and causing wounds. You should not argue with your neighbour during a banquet of wine, and you should not spurn him in his cheerfulness. You should not speak words of reproach to him, and you should not press him with repeated requests. Chapter 32. Have they appointed you as a leader? Do not be willing to be extolled. Be among them as one of them. Have concern for them, and in this way sit down with them. And when you have explained all your concerns, sit back. Then you may rejoice because of them, and you may receive a crown as an adornment of grace, and so obtain the dignity of the assembly. Speak you, who are greater by birth, for it is fitting for you to speak the first word with careful knowledge, but you should not hinder the music. Where no one is listening, you should not pour out words, and do not choose to be extolled improperly for your wisdom. A gemstone of garnet is set amid an ornament of gold, and a concert of music is set amid a banquet of wine. Just as a signet of emerald is set amid a work of gold, so is a melody of music set amid delightful and moderate wine. Listen silently, and for your reverence, good graces will be added to you. Young man, speak in your own case only reluctantly. If you have been asked twice, let your response be concise. In many matters, be as if you lack knowledge, and listen silently as well as intently. In the midst of great men, you should not be presumptuous, and where the elders are present, you should not speak much. Lightning goes before a hailstorm, and grace goes before modesty. And so, for your reverence, good graces will be added to you. And at the hour for rising, you should not be lax. Later, be the first to run ahead to your house, and there withdraw, and there take your past time, and act according to your intentions, but not in sin and not in arrogant speech. And for all these things, bless the Lord who made you and who fills you to overflowing with all his good things. Whoever fears the Lord will accept his doctrine, and whoever watches for him diligently will find a blessing. Whoever seeks the law will be filled from the law, but whoever acts with treachery will be scandalized by treachery. Those who fear the Lord will find just judgment, and they will kindle justice like a light. A sinful man will shun correction, and he will find a rationalization in accord with his own will. A man of counsel will not reject understanding. A strange and arrogant man will not be disturbed by fear. Even so, after he has acted out of fear and without counsel, he will be rebuked by his own criticism. Son, you should do nothing without counsel, and then you will not regret what you have done. You should not go into the way of ruin, and you then will not stumble on stones. You should not commit yourself to a laborious way, otherwise you may set up a scandal against your own soul. And be cautious concerning your own sons, and be attentive to those of your own household. In all of your works trust your soul to faith, for this is the keeping of the commandments. Whoever believes God attends to the commandments, and whoever trusts in him will not be diminished. Chapter 33. No evils will befall one who fears the Lord. Instead, God will preserve him during temptation and will free him from evils. A wise man does not hate the commandments and the justices, and so he will not be thrown about violently like a ship in a storm. A man of understanding puts his faith in the law of God, and so the law is faithful to him. Whoever would resolve a dispute will prepare a word, and so, having prayed, he will be heard, and he will observe discipline, and then he will respond. The heart of a fool is like the wheel of a cart, and his thoughts are like a turning axle. A friend who is a whisperer is like an untamed horse. He neighs under anyone who sits upon him. Why does day follow after day, and light follow after light, and year follow after year in accord with the sun? By the knowledge of the Lord they were arranged after the sun was made, in keeping with his command. And so the seasons changed with their feast days, and according to them they celebrated the feast days in their hour. Some of them God exalted and magnified, and some of them he set amid the ordinary days. And all men are from the ground, and from the earth, from which Adam was created. With a multitude of disciplines the Lord has distinguished them, and diversified their ways. Some of them he has blessed and exalted, and some of them he has sanctified and placed close to himself. And some of them he has cursed and brought low, and he has turned them from their station. Just as the clay is in the potter's hand, so as to form and to shape it, so are all his ways in accord with his dispensation, and so is man in the hand of the one who made him. and he will repay him according to his judgment. Good is against evil, and life is against death, and so also is a sinner against a just man. And so should you consider all the works of the Most High, two, and one against another. And I awakened at the very end, and I was like one who gathers grapes after the grape gatherers. I too have hoped in the blessing of God, and I have filled the winepress like one who gathers grapes. Consider how I have not laboured for myself alone, but for all who are seeking discipline. Listen to me, you great ones, with all the peoples, and incline your ears, you rulers of the church. You should not give authority over yourself to a son or wife, to a brother or friend in your life, and you should not give your estate to another, lest perhaps you may regret it, and then you would be begging for the same. While you are still living and breathing, let no one among all flesh change you, for it is better if your children petition you than if you look toward the hands of your children. In all your works be preeminent. You should not allow a blemish upon your glory. On the day of the consummation of the days of your life, at the time of your passing, distribute your inheritance. Fodder and a rod and a burden are for a donkey. Bread and discipline and work are for a servant. He works under discipline, and he seeks rest. Allow his hands to be idle, and he seeks liberty. The yoke and the strap bend a stiff neck, and continual labours bend a servant. Torture and chains are for a malevolent servant. Send him to work, so that he may not be idle. For idleness has taught much evil. Appoint him to a task, for this is fitting for him, and if he will not be obedient, bend him with chains. But you should do no more than any flesh can bear. Truly, you should do nothing grievous without judgment. If you have a faithful servant, let him be to you like your own soul. Treat him like a brother, for you have obtained him by the blood of your soul. If you harm him unjustly, he will turn away and flee. And then, when he lifts himself up and departs, you will not know whom to ask or in what way to seek him. Chapter 34. The hopes of a senseless man are empty and false, and dreams extol the imprudent. Like one who chases a shadow and pursues the wind, so also is one who pays attention to lying visions. In the vision of dreams, one thing represents another, as when a mask is before the face of a man. What can be cleansed by the unclean, and what truth can be spoken from a lie? Erroneous divinations and false signs and the dreams of evildoers are emptiness. For your heart suffers from imagination, like a woman suffering in childbirth. Unless it is a visitation sent from the Most High, you should not set your heart upon it. For dreams have caused many to go astray, and those who have hoped in them have fallen away. The word of the law will be fulfilled without a lie, and wisdom will be made plain in the mouths of the faithful. He who has not been tested, what does he know? A man with much experience will consider many things, and whoever has learned much will explain with understanding. He who has no experience knows little, and he who has done many things has made many mistakes. He who has not been tested, what kind of things can he know? He who has been deceived will be more cunning. I have seen much by wandering, and the customs of many things. At times I have even been in danger of death because of these things, but I was freed by the grace of God. The spirit of those who fear God is sought, and they will be blessed by his providence. For their hope is in him who saves them, and the eyes of God are on those who love him. Those who fear the Lord will tremble at nothing, and they will not be terrified, for he is their hope. The soul of him who fears the Lord is blessed. To whom should he look, and who is his strength? The eyes of the Lord are upon those who fear him. He is a powerful protector, a firmament of virtue, a shelter from the heat, and a covering from the midday sun, a guardian from offences and a helper from falling, who exalts the soul and illuminates the eyes, and who gives health and life and blessing. An immolation from iniquity is a stained oblation, and the derisions of the unjust are not well pleasing. The Lord is only for those who persevere for him in the way of truth and justice. The Most High does not approve of the gifts of the iniquitous, neither does he have respect for the oblations of the unjust, neither will he forgive their sins because of the multitude of their sacrifices. Whoever offers a sacrifice from the substance of the poor is like one who sacrifices the son in the sight of his father. The bread of the indigent is the life of the poor. Whoever cheats them out of it is a man of blood. Whoever takes away the bread of sweat is like one who kills his neighbour. He who sheds blood and he who cheats the hired hand out of his wages are brothers. When one builds and another destroys, what benefit do they have from their labour? When one prays and another curses, whose voice will God heed? He who washes himself after touching the dead, and then touches him again, what was the benefit of his washing? Similarly, a man who fasts for his sins and then does the same again, what was the benefit of his humbling himself? Who will heed his prayer?